is buried. Okay? So for me, that is a sacred space. It's a Jewish space for obvious reasons. But publicly, it doesn't appear on the stage of history as such. Okay? Now that raises problem number 4. And so we're going to try to speed along through the next 3 problems. The presumed adequacy of classical Christian and Euro-Jewish theological language for purposes of historiography. Okay? We cannot allow our religious biases to control what we do in terms of our research. Here is a marriage license for my great-uncle. My great-uncle Saul, who was a man who could pass. He was Sephardic as the day he was born. But look at the language on this marriage license, even though it's a state document, to any ordained or licensed minister of the gospel. Right? So you know Christian language is functioning as hegemonic, even though it's a government-endorsed document. Saul Isaac and Pauline Dottenheim. The reason I know that my great-uncle Saul could pass as a historian, the reason I know. Look who signs the document. The above name were married by me, Reverend Dr. R. Farber, Rabbi. Okay? Nowadays, you don't have too many rabbis describing themselves publicly as a reverend doctor, right? That's considered to be Christian terminology. But for the 18th and 19th century Jews in this country, they often used Christian language to express, to negotiate through the dominant society. And so here, the fact that you have somebody put rabbi on a marriage license is evidence not necessarily of the Jewishness of the people only, but also of their whiteness. Okay? It's evidence of both. Now, this is my great-granddad's marriage license. Now look at the language, it's the same. To any licensed minister of the gospel in regular communion with the Christian church or society of which he is a member. Jonas Isaac, Mary Davis. Joseph Davis, Judge Davis, officiating minister. You see what's going on? If you were to look at this document and just read the words, you would assume that the people involved were Christians. But they're not Christians. They're Jews. And I know this because, not only because of what I was told and that I'm telling you, they were able to get this marriage done because this gentleman, Joseph Davis, was actually a white Jew. Mary Davis was a white Jewish woman who could pass. Because this was a mixed marriage, this actually comprised an illegal document at the time. Okay? And so now you have situations like this. Is this my great uncle, Joe Davis? Right? Because of the negotiations of race, our family split, and now we have white Jews that don't associate with us. And you have our side of the family, and we don't associate with the white Jews. And so people transgenerationally are left with questions about identity and place in history. The 5th problem is the neglect of non-academic documentation of African American and Native American Jewish traditions. You can do research on Jews of color in the Americas, but you have to get outside the typical academic sources. You got to get outside the archives. This woman, Rabbi Caldwell, is where's Rabbi Caldwell? He was just speaking to me about this wonderful woman named St. Rhoda Benson. She's a poet who should be in her 90s by now. If not, she's really close to her 90s, who for most of her life actually wrote poems, but the poems described mundane Jewish religious life amongst African Americans in New England. And so when I went to her and she said, oh, I want you to transcribe some things for me, she brought out hundreds of these poems. And she's describing, what black Jews are doing during the Civil Rights Movement. She describes what black Jews were doing during World War II. She just describes what black Jews are doing during the Reagan era. These are the types of non-traditional sources that historiographers have to appeal to. An example of good work, however, is this right here. This is the remnants of a headstone, not a headstone, excuse me, a head marker at a cemetery on the Jewish plantation of Suriname in South America. Now, the woman who took this photograph is a very wonderful architect. She lives in New York now, and when she went to Suriname, what she noticed on this plantation were that many, and I'm talking hundreds, of the graves had these markers where they took Akan symbols, that is the Sankofa birds. They took Sankofa birds and overlaid them with stars of David. Now, if somebody wants a really good dissertation project, go to Suriname and find out who made these head markers, right? This is an example of, because the cemeteries have been there for hundreds of years, this is an example of research that's gone ignored, but that can reveal a lot more about Afro-Jewish creolizations in the New World. And I use this just to see, I mean, even photographs can tell you a lot about how Jews are negotiating race, historically speaking. You can just look at this photo from the Jim Crow South and tell that new forms of cultural knowledge are being created, right? I mean, that's all you have to do is look at this photo. Okay, and so we come back to what really drove me to give this presentation in the first place, which is my assumption that wherever you go, wherever you find Jews, you're going to find mixture. And if you want to do some really good historiographic work, don't take the approach that people have in the past, that assuming that simply because Jewish institutions may or may not be segregated today, that they were always that way. No, assume that wherever Jews go, they mix, they combine, they blend, they create new traditions, and they create meanings for themselves. If anyone has any more questions, I think we can just go ahead and move over to the question and answer session. Thank you very much.